Hello, everybody. This is Debby Enoe from Teacher Success Coach with another episode on the challenges and triumph of online teaching during the pandemic that we've had. And many of the lessons have been taught online or not at all at the Female Educators Roundtable with a lot of my guests from around the world, who is going to introduce herself. But first of all, let me thank you for actually accepting the offer to come on the show. And I do thank my followers for continuing to follow us. Thanks a lot. Introduce yourself, tell us where you come from, tell us what subjects you teach, etc. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. Well, I'm excited to be here. I was surprised to receive your message and know that you were interested in a discussion online. I'm very happy to participate. I'm Isabel Silva. I am located in Quito, Ecuador, in the middle of the world in South America. I currently teach first grade, which would be 6 to 7-year-olds, and I teach every subject. I work at a school called Discovery Academy. We are focused on early elementary, and we are an English immersion school in a Spanish-speaking country.
Okay. So the dominant language would be Spanish. So everything is taught in Spanish.
Not in my case. In our school, we teach everything 100% in English, but the majority of the country does learning in Spanish, and some do bilingual education. We do 100% English.
Okay, thank you. Okay, but so therefore Spanish is one of the languages that are taught. That's all.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. What we are looking at is you tell us about your experience teaching online, especially to these young children, because initially the topic I was going to look at was how does the children show up for the lessons. However, this is now irrelevant because you're teaching small children. So it is not the responsibility of the children, it's the responsibility of the adults, i.e. the carer or the parents, etc. So on that basis, it'd be nice for you to tell us your experience of teaching these little children online. What was it like? What was the attendance, etc., etc.? Thank you.
Well, first of all, when we focus on little children, as you say, the people that are most responsible to do it are parents. Parents are the ones that need to keep a schedule of what's happening, need to know what assignments children need to fulfill. They need to be the ones to have a alarm system or something to have children connecting and logging into all our meetings and all our classroom experiences. I had to deal with this both as an educator and as a mother. So for the past maybe about the last 15 weeks of school, we were doing virtual education. And I remember clearly having to log on to my class and having alarms set for my daughter, for my son, for my daughter, for my son, for me, for my daughter, for my son, for me. So it was absolutely chaotic in the sense that it was very stressful. Like, I've been thinking about it, and going to school is stressful because you have to drive and you have to get there on time and get the children ready and stuff like that. That's stressful. But even if you're at home, but you're doing virtual education, and on top of the pandemic situation, having virtual education, other children, home obligations and things like that, it's been something that has been quite challenging in many areas.
Okay, thank you. When you say challenging in many areas, like how? Explain some of it.
Yes, kind of like what we talked about before starting our live. Us women, we have a lot of responsibilities at home. We have taken on ourselves a lot of the responsibilities of raising the children, preparing the food, making sure the clothes are clean, cleaning around the house. And then as teachers, we have to teach, we have to plan, we have to prepare in such a way that parents that mostly have no educational background will be able to help their children understand and know what we're talking about. In addition to that, since you're teaching smaller kids, it's hard for them to be able to focus so much because they are little. So since they're little, they cannot get the human side and the interaction that an experienced teacher would give them in order to help them when they have a problem, when they don't understand something, kind of to catch whatever misconceptions they have in the past to build onto that knowledge, that objective of that day. So it's been difficult, and I'm sure it hasn't only been difficult for teachers, but very much so for parents as well.
Okay, thank you. So wait, how did you manage to teach? You say you teach 6 to 7 year olds, right?
Yes.
How you managed to teach them in time and also keep their attention, and how long was your lesson? So I've asked you two questions.
Yeah, that's fine. A lot of people here in our country started doing like 4 to 5 hour lessons a day, which would mean children sitting in front of the computer for that long.
Wow.
For us, that was completely not pedagogic, something that we were not going to do. So we kind of split our activities as follows. We combined some with Facebook Live for our school, where we would do read alouds Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So all our community would be able to be there for read alouds. Then every group, I would meet with my students on Tuesday and Thursdays. And in these times, I would discuss some of the homework, but also read a story, do some math activities, play some games. It was very light. It was very, very fun to be together. And then on Wednesdays, they would have a connecting time with another teacher that they really enjoyed. And on Fridays, we would go on field trips. So in this way, the connecting times that we had were in part teaching and clarifying some of the topics that we were discussing that week, but mostly a time of relief for them to be socially active with those who they grown up with for the past 6 months or 7 months.
Okay.
And then we taught those meetings were about 30 minutes long. They were between 30 to 40 minutes. So it wouldn't be too long. And even so, my daughter, who is currently 6, there would be times when she would just, when she got tired, she would just leave the meeting. So, yes.
Okay. So your daughter is in your class, right?
No, she's actually a year younger. Like we placed her in the kindergarten class because I would rather her be the older in the class than the youngest in the class. So she is with younger kids, and she just get tired. Like the pandemic was very hard for them socially. So there would be days when she was just tired, and she'd be like, okay, bye-bye, or not even bye-bye. And she that did it disconnect us? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And she would just leave her meeting. So
whoa, thank you. One other thing is, okay, so your lessons, instead of being 4 or 5 hours a day, it was 30 minutes a session, right?
Yes.
So you only had 30 minutes with the class per day. Was that it?
Yes. 20, 30, 40 minutes a day with the class.
Okay. And in that session, you did, you say you did reading, etc., right?
Yes, reading, some math exercises, some games.
Okay. So how did you gain their attention? What was the issue in terms of attention and retention? How you gain the attention? How did you retain it, etc.?
As time went on, it was harder for them to focus because they'd been online for so long that they would just get tired of being there, I think. So one of the great things that we did with little kids was play with them. So for example, I started out my day or my hour with a scavenger hunt. And since a lot of my children are ESL, then I would tell them to go look for a balloon somewhere in their home and then show them a picture of the balloon. And then they would come, and then we would tally the score and be like, who won this time? Oh, you get a point, good job. And like, that's exciting. They're moving, they're happy. We're practicing English, we're counting, we're comparing. So lots of things are done through fun individual activities.
Right. Okay, so which means that, for example, if you say them go and find a balloon around the house, which if that child doesn't have a balloon, which means the child doesn't get a point. But at the same time, the child's actually left, had to go and find it. So,
they would all come back. They were excited for the challenge of the game. So even if they didn't have it, some of them would just stay on their chair. They're like, no, I don't have that in my house. And I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. But it's still fun to participate in something that is active and that is teaching them some vocabulary and some fun engagement with their peers, because in the end, although they don't see their peers, it is who they've been growing up with. It is who they've been befriending and who they still want to have a relationship with.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing is, in terms of they actually going to get something, etc. How did you keep their attention? Okay, you did the exercise with them, and how much of that were they another question before I ask that, when you actually send them to get something, did they come back?
Yes, they'd come back because they want to win. They want to get the point for being the first one to come back. So they'd come back running, which is great. So I didn't have to be like, hey, where are you? Come back. None of that. It was good. They would return.
Okay. So how many children do you normally have in the physical classroom?
This is gonna sound a little silly, but because we have a big ESL group in our first grade, we would combine them with the kindergarten class to do some of the English stuff, because a lot of the kindergarten class knew a lot more English. So we would do our English groups with both classes combined and split them into beginner, middle, advanced combined. So some of my first graders would actually mix in with the kindergartners that are already a little more advanced in some things. So when we were physically present, I would say that we were about 16, 17 students together.
Okay. But when you actually came online, you actually had your own class. You kept your separate class.
Then it was just the first graders. But some of them, some of the activities, like the activity with the other teacher, would be all class 16. And then the activity on Friday where we would go on a field trip, it would be the whole class, kindergarten and first grade. So they would continue to see their peers and continue to grow with them, along with them.
Okay. So how many children do you have for yourself? Let's say when you did not combine them, because I'm just trying to think in terms of when you send them to do the activity, how many of them you had in class and how many of them came back, right?
This is going to sound really silly, but before I do this, I got to give some background. We are a new school. We started 3 years ago with preschool only. This is our first year where we opened kindergarten and first grade.
Okay.
So a lot of the kindergarteners were students that grew up with us and came into kindergarten with us. We only had preschool last year, and this year we started with elementary first and kinder and first.
Okay.
So that is why our numbers are like this. And we have actually I had four first graders to work with. This was a big blessing, because I didn't have to control 20. I had to control 4.
Oh my goodness. So your class, you're now telling me, let me get this right. You're now telling me you had a class. So in the physical classroom, you'll be teaching a class sometime of 4.
Sometimes a 4, sometimes a 16. But yes, from 4 to 16, depending on the subject.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Which is really good, because they had a very personalized education. They were very loved. You know how in big classes sometimes children can be left to the side because, I don't know, they just do what they're told, and you're not able to really see specific needs that they would have at that time, because they're just doing what they're told. But when you have a very small classroom, it's much easier to understand a little bit more of their needs.
Yeah, and it's much easier to manage. You know, having a classroom of that amount, oh my goodness, even though I'm teaching A-level students, which is students 16 to 18 or 16 to 17, the smallest class I've ever had, I think, is 8. Wow, that's fantastic.
This is my first class that I've had 4. I've had 12, I've had 19, I'd have 23 in elementary. So this is my first time with a very little class.
Wow, you must be feeling really nice.
It's nice, but at the same time, it's important for them to have the social interaction with the other kids. That's why we would have the combination of both.
Okay. So thank you. So when you actually did your activity of the scavenger hunt, etc., scavenger hunt here, you actually had the class of 16, right?
Field trips, we had a class of 16, yes.
Okay. But the scavenger hunt, you had a class of 4?
Yes, for the scavenger hunt, yes, it was 4. 4 little girls running everywhere. They're all girls too.
So is it an all-girls school you're teaching, or it's a mixed school?
It's a mixed school, but first grade only had 4 girls.
Okay, okay. Oh my goodness. So even in terms of me asking you how you kept their attention, that's also quite an easy thing to do because you only have 4 in the class.
It's easier, but in a way it's also harder because they don't have the interaction of all the other kids. You know, in a big class, not everyone, but at least the top 4 or 5 are participating. They all want to say something, and the other 4 are listening, and maybe the other 4 are distracted. So yes, everything is happening in a big class. There's more involvement, there's more communication, but with them 4, in a way it was harder to get them to participate because there's so few, and because they're ESL, it was harder for them to get actually more participation in, because they don't have the reference of those that do participate due to the language.
Yeah. I could see how that could be quite challenging because, when you have a nice big class, it's like it is true, everybody's participating. When you have a small class, sometimes you're just left with the silence sometimes.
Yes. You're like, Sarah, so Sarah, what do you think? Tell me, what do you think? Or what are you doing? I did have sometimes when some of my kids would just disappear from the screen and they would leave. And then I'd be like, so-and-so, come back. We're looking for you. Where are you? And she'd be like, I'm with my sister. I'd be like, okay, come sit down. Because we obviously didn't want to make it something that was heavy on them, where they had to be sitting down military style and just doing exactly this or rote memorizing or anything like that. It was more of a time together. So there were times when I had to like bring them back, or they would be in their bedrooms laying down and I'd have to say, hey, Sarah, get up, come back. Let me close the door a sec, okay? Because it's very loud.
Okay. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay, thank you.
So I did have times when they would be like laying down. They're like, hey, come back, come sit down, come close to the screen. I can't see you. What are you saying? Did you read this? Did you do this? So there's still a lot of intentional things where you have to focus on each of them. Be like, hey, are you doing this? What do you think of this? And you, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Like making sure that everyone is giving out an idea or participating or trying to figure out the assignments and things like that.
Thank you. Whereas when you say you all went on field trip when you were 16 of you guys, right?
Yes.
So how was it? Explain the field trip. Tell me what aspect.
That was a little more difficult because having more students online, 2 things I'm going to tell you about. I would be showing them the moon or Mars or something. We'd be walking around Mars, and I would see how some of them started drawing on the screen. So on my screen that I'm sharing, my children would be scribbling and just drawing dots and circles. So all the time I would have to have my eraser connected and just erase over everything that they would be doing. So it was different challenges. They would be drawing on the screen, or I don't know, some of them would be singing on the microphone on purpose. So all of them would be there and I'd be like listening, and they'd be like, blah, 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 blah. So different challenges for a bigger class. So I didn't want to mute them all the time. So what I would do during our field trips, I would say what we have to do during field trips, you have to remember that we have to look, listen. Shh, let's do it again. Look, listen. Shh. And then someone would get crazy and I would be looking at the screen and one of the kids would be telling them to quiet down. So at least like trying to figure little tools or things to remind them of as to have a behavior that during our meetings, virtual meetings, that they've never done before. So it was a learning experience for all of us. It was 15 weeks of lots of work as well.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So which means that whatever you set out in terms of the field trip, did you feel that it actually met your outcome? How did the student enjoy those field trips?
Sometimes I think they were very boring to them. I obviously as the weeks went by, I matured in my teaching and I was able to figure something that was a little better for them. So something that worked out nice was reading a book before going on our field trip, maybe stopping in places that connected to the book before that we read, and then watching a video about what we were doing, and then another book. So having a full experience connecting to that topic, connecting from different sources. That was very good. But what something at the beginning, I was like, oh, these field trips, they're not listening. They have no clue what we're doing. This is terrible. And then at the end of the field trip, one of them would be like, so the fossils are the ones that go underneath the ground, just like this and this that we learned in school. And I was like, boom, okay, this is working. It moved me to say, oh, okay, this is going well. We can keep doing this, and it will benefit them in some way.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. The interesting thing about it, because we have never been trained, I keep on saying it all my session, to teach online. So therefore, we had to figure it out. And figuring out how to connect the field trip with reading the book, with, stopping in the session. It's a lot to really think about when you have never had that experience.
Yes.
So it's a matter of figuring out what works. And for you, the fact that, when you actually hear them talking about, you're thinking, yes, I could feel it, thinking, yes, I've actually got that working. And then you think, oh my goodness, next week I need to plan another one.
Yeah, another one that works. In this case, for me, I really did benefit probably from the group that we're in together on Facebook. I really benefited from joining Facebook groups of teachers, both in my grade and for the global pandemic. There's a global pandemic group where if you search your grade, you can read a lot of discussions on what they're doing, on what's worked, on what was good. And so you really can't spend all your day reading what other people say, but it does help to have little tips here and there to guide you in something new. Because yes, we all started it at the same time. We all have different resources. Our students are all different, but technology is not. Like, people can teach you how to, I don't know, use Microsoft slides, or how to use a video instead of something else. And like, it was very good to have a little support from a group that you would have never thought that would kind of give you a clue on how to do it better, because they just did it last week. So that was very good for us. And now, like, the planning also had to be thought of in a way that parents, it was very hard because it had to be done in a way that parents would understand what you're teaching. Because sometimes, let's imagine you're teaching making a 10, but parents just say, oh, memorize the facts because that's how they learned it. All the facts to make a 10 are these. But for us, we want little kids to understand what it means. So in order to understand it, you have to look and search and design activities that will actually get them to a point where they see that, oh, that made a 10, which is really hard because it's teaching parents and children. So
Right.
it was difficult.
Okay. So in your case, you had to teach the parents and the children, so the parents could actually understand it and also teach the child as well. So how was that with parents? Were the parents really receptive?
I think I live in a culture where they have been very well trained in just doing what they're told. So so it wasn't really something where they said, oh, this isn't okay, what is going on here? They were very, or maybe it's the pandemic where we're in a point where we're very vulnerable and we know that this is what we have to do. And so parents were very supportive. And with the activities, there would be some that would say, I'm not sure how to do this. How do I work on this? And then I would give voice notes and I would send videos, because in addition to our email platform, we would have a WhatsApp group where they could connect and children could write messages and send photos and videos and stuff, so that we can kind of monitor what's going on, and parents could also get the support needed a little bit, because really, I don't think I don't think in this pandemic and with these conditions, things can actually work out so wonderfully. But we tried our best and we got through the year, and I can't believe it. I'm still a little bit in shock.
So when did you finish? When did you guys finish
We
teaching?
finished June 30th.
Okay, okay. So it's just a few. It's not even a proper week yet. Okay.
It's a week. It's a week,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, okay, okay. Right. So in terms of the parents, right? A lot of educators were saying to me that the parents were not receptive, but it seems like your parents were backing you guys up. They were right there behind you to support their children.
Yes, very much so. They were, well, we were locked in at home, We can't really get out.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can say. Well, I do have a mom that is a doctor in a public hospital, so she definitely was coming and going, but the father was involved with the kids' needs at that point. So I would say that since children lost all their routine, parents had to manage them somehow, and everything that we provided for them was something that we provided for them, and that was also provided for me as a mom, was something that helped them keep a little bit of normal in the children's lives. So maybe although it was a lot of work, it was also, in my case, it was appreciated to have something to go by and not just like, I don't understand some schools, they had 2 weeks of virtual and they said school's year's over. So that's really tough. What happens if there's still a whole month left and the child still needs something? They still need to see their teacher. Maybe they still need to see their friends. So I think in a way it was healthy for us to continue our full school year virtually and not kind of give up early on, like as a Ministry of Education in our country, not to finish it early. I think it was healthy for us to continue. And since parents were locked at home, it was also an important tool for them to be able to handle their kid that they never do for like a full school year. So I see both the positive and the negative of having had to do that.
Okay, thank you. How, did your school supported you guys in terms of giving you resources? Did they actually, find different groups for you guys to connect with? I heard you said that you were in the global teaching group. I'm also connected with them as well. So did the school actually provide any WhatsApp support for you in that way?
I think given that we're a small school, it's not as determinant to have to say, oh, they didn't support me or they did support me. It was very much a teacher taking on a challenge and completing the requirements that we had to do. The school provided some ideas on online resources that we could use, but it doesn't really determine some of the stuff that we had to complete, because you already know your curriculum and the requirements of what you're going to get your child through the year. So it's just kind of going along with what is already required since the beginning of the school year.
Okay. So it seems like you had quite a lot of flexibility for you to decide how you're going to take your curriculum forward.
Flexibility in the how, but not flexibility in the what, because you have to fulfill a curriculum. So how you do it comes in with lots of creativity from the teacher of how you're going to get that child to understand, in my case, the clock, how to read a clock. So how do you do that? Okay, we have to look through activities that are easy for parents to do, but also will give the children the information needed to succeed. So it's more of I think it brought out a lot of more creativity and looking for resources for children to benefit from this time at home.
Yeah. Thank you. So what platform did you use?
We use Zoom. We use Zoom with passwords.
Okay. Because a lot of the schools were having challenges in using Zoom due to the the security around that, etc. So a lot of them use Google Classroom. Yeah. Yes. So was that your whole school use Zoom, or was it just individual educators?
No, our whole school used Zoom with good passwords, and we had no problem at all.
Okay. That's interesting. The other factor as well, your school is small, as you say, so which means that, probably in terms of the security, it didn't pose so much of a problem as if it was a bigger school. I don't know, but
Maybe, but I think it depends a little bit on who you share the information with. If you're
yeah.
sure that your WhatsApp group is safe, and obviously they're not going to share it with strangers because
Mm,
it's just the parents trying to connect with the kids, I don't see any filtering of information that would lead to something unsafe. I'm
mm.
not quite sure how it becomes unsafe unless they didn't have a password, which is, I think that's what happened, where people didn't have passwords in order for, like, passwords for their classrooms, and that's when other people could just join whenever they wanted.
Because they've had, an educator was saying to me off screen, I think it was last week, at one time, people actually was joining them on Zoom. I think, oh, that's dodgy, you know,
Yeah, of
things
course.
like that. Things like that. The other thing is, did you give your children homework? And how did they actually, negotiate the homework? What did they do in terms of the homework? Things like that. I've got so many more questions to ask you.
Well, for us, I really found some great online practice that I would assign every day. And
Okay.
then children also had a checklist.
Okay.
So let's say our parents had a Google Drive that was only allowed for them to join, where they could download and see the work for that week. So all of
Okay.
my preparation was sorted by subject in this Google Drive. So every Monday, I didn't give them any meeting one-on-one or online, so they could actually look over the work and understand what's going to happen and kind of see what needed to be printed out and whatnot. And then we would go take on the week. So the homework was actually all of the weekly activities. It wasn't homework per se, but everything was homework because they're teaching them at home and they're working at home. So everything was really homework assigned to them.
Okay. Did you meet with your children one to one?
No, I did not meet with them one to one. I think
Why?
that having such a small classroom, it
Yeah.
was it was it was almost a one to one because you would also
Yeah.
have like a conversation with all of them on how you're doing, what's going on, and then the other one would tell you something else, and then they'd get on with what's going on during the pandemic and stuff like that. So it was a small group. Let's say it was more of a small group discussion time.
Right. So when you had when you and the other teacher had the whole 16, it was the same kind of, you took on the same kind of process.
You what?
When you had the group of 16, it was two teachers, right? Two teachers
Yeah.
were sharing the class. Okay. So did you take on the same format of, just doing it with a whole group instead of, small groups?
The other teacher did try near the end to split them into smaller groups, more for social needs of having them to be heard, to have a time of being heard and spending some time with a smaller group, being able to share information and be with their friends. And she also had some one-on-one times where she assessed some of the things that she had been working on. But it was mostly a full group situation for us.
Okay.
Something that I did notice is that during field trips, some of my students wouldn't show up at all. So if I had 16, about 10 would show up.
Whoa, why? Did you find out? Did you know? Did you find out when you see them the next time? Did you find out? Did they come back the next time though? Let's say for the next lesson. Did you see them at all after?
Usually the same ones wouldn't show up.
Okay. And you
But
left.
since they showed up to our small group learning activities and stuff like that, maybe parents took it more of like a fun field trip activity or a fun thing where you can go or not go, and that's why some of them might not have shown up.
Okay. Or could it be a situation where they were not comfortable in a bigger group?
I don't know. Maybe it was too much. Like, I think for us as adults, we've been handling the technology for so long that there comes a point when you get tired as well. So imagine for little kids, like every day coming to a meeting, yeah, it's fun to see your friends, but maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm done and I just want to, I don't know, play with my toys today. And that's fine with me. Like, I think everything that they already got throughout the last 15 weeks, for them to take breaks in a way, I think that's fine. Like, sometimes we need that. You were talking about self-care at the beginning, and that might have been part of the self-care that the children needed, just to disconnect for a moment and not have to be there doing that at that moment.
Mm-hmm. That's true, because especially, such young children as well, I personally feel that, they learn a lot more through play, because learning takes place instead of you actually teaching them, through the Zoom classroom, etc. Playing has a significant impact on their learning. And that's something for that age group. When I was teaching such young children, play for me was let's play, because I just think it's quite nice. Let's play, because they gain a lot and you gain a lot.
Yes.
So that's one of the interesting thing about all of that as well. Another factor is how, in relationship to when they actually go back, right? This is something that actually comes to my mind as well. How do you think they're going to, do you think they're going to be coping? What's the, what have you guys got in place? When are you guys going back, first of all?
We have no clue yet. So the Ministry of Education and the government have not yet decided the type of education we're going to offer starting September. So I think they're waiting to see how the pandemic continues to develop. I live in the capital, and currently in the capital of our country, COVID cases are going up. We're in yellow. We're in yellow right now. We were in red before, but instead of pushing us to lock down again, they have opened up things more, because I think because of economical needs of, well, people need to work, it's super hard. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ecuador is either the first or the second country with most entrepreneurships in the world. So we live by making our own businesses or starting something. The majority of them die by the first year, but everyone is trying to make gains. Everyone is trying to meet their needs somehow. So I don't know. I really don't know. What people are saying, which has nothing to do with the government, but what people are saying is that they're looking at February, March, become a fully present education, or semi-virtual or fully virtual until then. But I really don't know. It's gonna be really hard for the kids to figure out how to do education again in person, but it's also going to be so wonderful for them to get out and to be able to see their friends and talk and be heard and have that again in their lives, because I think psychologically, which you would know most, they really need that. I'm sure they're missing it. I see it in my own children, that they miss the familiarity of things, the routine, the friends, the recess, the snack. They miss so many things that it's difficult. So I think we're going to deal with emotional stress that we didn't deal with before. And we're definitely going to deal with holes in knowledge. Like probably parents might have taught it wrong. Maybe they never got to it. So we're going to have to deal with catching up a lot of kids. I think this generation might be a generation that is a little different in knowledge senses, but more advanced in a lot of other things like technology or dealing with change and things like that. So I'm not sure. I think it's going to be very, very hard to figure that out now. Only God knows what's in store.
It is so very true. Thank you for that. One of the things that I keep saying to educators, either those who have started already or those who are going to be starting soon, one of the things is, when you actually go back to the classroom, you will no longer be the first 2 weeks. I cannot teach as you will be teaching. There'll be no academic. There'll be the emotional needs of those children that you need to first deal with before you actually put in the academic in. Because, as you rightly say, the fact that they've been away from socializing physically for such a long time, when they go back into the physical classroom, it's like, how are they, there's so many things happening all at once. In relationship to they're connecting with the friends, they're connecting with the teacher. So the first thing, I feel that every institution have to deal with is the psychological effect of this whole situation on the mind of the children, and how are they going to, how the children are going to be dealing with it. Because that, I feel, need to be fully addressed before we could actually even think about academically, going forward with the children. Because there's so many issues, as you rightly identify. This is new to everybody, and especially young children. That sometimes we think that, oh, that doesn't affect them. But because they may not say anything, that doesn't mean it's not affecting them. They just don't know how to express it.
Yes.
So with any educator going in with young children, it's tricky. Because they're not, sometimes they're able to express, sometimes they're not. So how you deal with that?
It's very unknown, and young children definitely express many things through behaviors. So we're going to have to see what those behaviors will be. Maybe some of them will just start crying because they're overwhelmed. Maybe some of them will hit. Maybe some of them will not want to be there. Maybe we really don't know how this is going to affect them. Hopefully, Lord willing, they're in a place in their homes where they can receive some kind of support, where they can be a little healthier upon return. But it's very hard to determine at this point.
I personally see in terms of, because my background is psychology, I see in terms of, especially for young children, one of the things I would strongly suggest to schools is use a lot of play techniques, because a lot of the behavior that they would have actually seen, or how they would be able to express it, it may not be verbally. It'll have to come out through playing and through, so that's a lot of, I really don't envy you, because that's a lot of things you would need to start looking at in terms of, to identify some of the emotional trauma that the child might be experiencing, which the child may not be able to verbalize.
Yes, totally.
So that's something, that's another thing that I really do hope that a lot of education, a lot of ministers of education actually looking at that as a way forward in terms of, implementing a lot of play therapy into the classroom, especially with younger children, because as we know, they don't always verbalize it.
Yes, and it's hard, because I think right now they're focusing on logistics. So the Ministry of Education is probably stressed out. They're focusing on logistics. They don't even, because of the economic burden that has been thrown onto all these families. A lot of them have lost their jobs. A lot of them have seen diminished hours. A lot of them had death in their families. So many things are happening within those homes that the ministry is trying to figure out the logistics of. Maybe this family can't afford the private school they were paying. Now they have to go to the public school. Do we have enough to support all the public school increase of students? And they don't. So right now they're probably thinking logistics wise, but hopefully, like you say, organizations, ministries of education, governments can provide things for teachers where we can support children and even adults, but mostly children, in coming back and all the trauma, as you say, that they have encountered, because I think it's going to be big as well.
Yeah, it is. It's okay for adults. Most of us, I said, are able to verbalize our emotional feelings, but as we know, 90% of children are unable to verbalize it, and we know it comes out through play therapy, to play expression, and in terms of behavior. So that's something we need to be looking at as well, in terms of this child's behavior may not be a behavior. It could be as a result of the experience that they're actually going through. So they're walking through that experience, through the behavior that they're demonstrating. So that's something as educators we need to, be mindful, or possibly going into training for that, because sorry, go ahead.
You're right. And what I think about this as we talk about it is that even their academic development might be in a way delayed because they need to be emotionally better to grow. So I think these children, although they have gained so much from being at home if they live in a good home environment, but they've gained so much in learning through technology, but their academic development might be delayed for a few years because of their emotional needs that need to be met first. Like if a child is not doing okay, if they need help in some area, they're never going to learn. If their needs are not met first, if their physical obvious needs are not met first, they're not going to be ready to learn what they need at that moment. So we have to look at so many things. It's hard.
It is, because it's like the more I'm talking to you, the more I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it is a reminder that this behavior we are looking at come September or October, whenever it is, it may not be the behavior per se. It may be as a result of the trauma the child have experienced that is being demonstrated through the behavior pattern. So as a psychologist in terms of this, I also need to be looking at, whoa, this is big. How can this be addressed? Things like that. So it's really, I must say, going forward, I see a lot of, it's kind of a fearful in one extent, because I see a lot of issues in the classroom with the students when they come back. Because I also see, initially I thought, okay, 2 weeks, we actually try to get the psychological aspect out of the way. But I do feel, no, that's a joke. There's no way. It's going to be an ongoing process, which we as educators need to be mindful and constantly address those situations. And when we see a behavior presenting itself, we need to question, is this a behavior or is it a result of what have just taken place?
I think it's going to be, maybe it will become a subject in school. Maybe it will become something for us elementary teachers that teach all subjects and all grades. Maybe it's going to become another subject, emotional therapy, or myself, I don't know, something. It will become a subject where you have to deal with that throughout the years, because for little children, it has been hard. Like I've had my kids just, whenever they're upset, whenever things go wrong, they're like, I really miss my friends, and they say, I hope coronavirus is done. And my son is just turned 4, so and my daughter is 6, so it's affected them a lot. Like it leads them to tears. And let's say this is happening in a loving home. Imagine if they come from a home where, on top of coronavirus and all the fears of it, they have neglect of many sorts. So I think it might have to become a subject in school where we have to build them up throughout the year so that they can be emotionally stronger and maybe forget a little bit about certain academic things, or in a way.
Yeah, I do totally agree with you there, because it's big. It's only when I'm talking to you now, the magnitude of the whole situation is actually taken from, especially, you are teaching the young children. It's amazing. It's big, especially as we know the young children cannot fully express. Another question actually came to mind as we were talking in terms of resources. Had all the children the relevant resources to actually, come online from the 16 that you've actually been dealing with? Did they all have the luxury of the resources in terms of being able to come online, the internet? Did they live in rural area? What was the situation in getting all of them to come on board, especially for the field trip?
Well, considering that we are a private school and parents pay for the education, they most likely all had the resources necessary to join. We do have a couple low-income families where it was a little more difficult, and there have been, just in general, in our public, in our school, in our student body, I'm saying, not in my class, but there are some, for example, where the computer was busy being used for other things, or maybe they didn't have the computer readily available. So, or internet was our internet in our country is not that great, so maybe internet connection wasn't so good. But we're talking about a group of people that are able to do this. I if I venture to talk about the 80% of the country that doesn't, then that would be a whole other very sad conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. Have you got anything else you want to say to us in terms of, various tips? What are you going to take back to the classroom from your from your
It's so
online
hard.
setup?
I think I haven't had enough time in this week of summer break to think about it quite yet. I think that something that really benefits children, and it is something that I enjoy doing myself, is having very set routines in the classroom. So if you're doing this every day, it will give them security and knowledge of what's coming, and therefore they're going to be more calm throughout the day because they know what's next, which is often what younger student teachers do by setting up a schedule with pictures and telling them what's going to happen during this day every day, or they do one activity every day that children know that that's the activity that's going to come and they're going to be happy with that. So a little bit of that goes along with the activities we had during the pandemic. They were always set, they always knew what happened every day. So at least in that sense, they had a security of what's happening today. So my daughter would wake up, she'd say, oh, today's Monday, today's story time. So that was already set. She knew that that's happening. That's something to look forward to. So even from this pandemic where we have a set group of activities, same thing will continue next year where they will know this day is this, next day is that. Like a very structured, I think will benefit them lots for their like security, for feeling safe, for understanding what's happening, and being more secure in the place where they're in. I'm not sure how to say it. I'm not sure how to express that, but I hope you understand. Daddy, daddy. Se le congeló, creo. Creo que